theyeshiva.net.
Okay, welcome everybody. So we're going to start today the 10th chapter of Maseches Pesachim, known as Arvei Pesachim. The chapter is Arvei Pesachim because the Mishnah begins with the words Arvei Pesachim, or according to Rashi's Girsa, Erev Pesachim. But the way the world calls it is Arvei Pesachim, which means the eve, the day before Pesach, Erev Pesach. And this is the 10th and final chapter in Maseches Pesachim. We have reached yesterday till Yud Dalet Amud Aleph, which is the last section of the first chapter that goes till Daf Chaf Aleph, and deals with Tumah and Tara. So Bli Neder, we'll get back to that. I didn't forget that, because it's really a very, very precious sugya to learn, because it gives you a fundamental understanding of all the laws of purity and impurity, which for many people is very confusing. You know, we hear the word Tumah, the word Tara, it's Tara, what, when, where. It's Makabel Tumah, it's not Makabel Tumah, it's a Rishon, it's a Sheni, it's a Shlishi, it's a Revi, it's an Av. And that's one of the main sugyas that gives clarity. That's the end of Perek Rishon. But since I'm just discussing where we're leaving from. So that's that's the last piece of Perek Rishon. Doesn't deal so much with chametz or matzah, it deals with Tumah and Tara. And then we go over, and really Maseches, but now we're starting the 10th chapter, the last chapter, which is around 20 blot. And it's the last section of Masechta Pesachim. And what's really interesting is that Masechta Pesachim has 10 chapters, and it's really chronological. Chronological, I mean, is it goes according to time. It starts off with Lar Ba'asar Boitkin Asachametz Lar Haner. The night of the 14th, you start B'dikas Chametz, which in terms of halacha, that's the beginning of the preparations for Pesach. Of course, we know we prepare weeks before and months before, and people go bake matzah and clean their homes and prepare whatever, and there's guests coming and you freeze your food, whatever it is, right? I got a shaila last night in the middle of the night about Hilchas Pesach. Somebody's preparing their food for Pesach. They want to know if chametz gets bottled before Pesach. I was like, whoa. The night of Rosh Chodesh Adar Sheni, he's cooking for Pesach. A man. Pretty cool. Called organization.
Imagine what it takes for this man to be
You never know. I don't judge. Yesh b'zeh mashem b'zeh, right? But essentially, the night before Pesach, that's when you begin, and that's the first perek. The first perek deals with b'dikas chametz. The first perek deals with the isur chametz. The first perek deals with, like we learned, when you stop eating chametz, when you could benefit from chametz. It's It's the night of Erev Pesach and Erev Pesach in the morning. And it continues. Pesach continues with the isur of chametz, because isur of chametz starts midday Erev Pesach. That's not Pesach yet. It's the preparations of Pesach. And then the Mishnah continues with the isur of chametz and the matzah. What matzah is? You got to bake matzah. You got to prepare matzah. Then the Perek goes over to midday afternoon, which is the Korban Pesach. They used to bring the Korban Pesach on the afternoon before Pesach. And that continues all the way throughout the next chapters. You have chapter 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, including the halachas of Pesach Sheni, be makar of the Pesach. Finally, you get to the 10th chapter. And the 10th chapter actually is Pesach. You get to the night of Pesach. And that's what it deals with. The night of Pesach has 3 major mitzvahs, biblical mitzvahs. The 3 major mitzvahs of the night of Pesach, biblical mitzvahs, are what? To eat the Korban Pesach. To eat the korban that we offer in the afternoon, we have to eat at night. Number 1. Number 2, the mitzvah of eating matzah. The mitzvah of eating matzah, right? Biblical mitzvah of eating matzah, together with maror and the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach and the matzah and the maror. And then there's the third mitzvah. And what's the third mitzvah? V'higada talavincha. The third mitzvah is to tell the story of the Exodus of Egypt. Those are the 3 biblical mitzvahs of the night. Of course, we have many rabbinic mitzvahs. For example, drinking 4 cups of wine, but that's not biblical. We have the mitzvah of reclining, right? Haseba, but that's not biblical. We have the mitzvah of saying Hallel. We say Hallel, but that's not a biblical mitzvah. That's chapters of Tehillim. So it's always important. Then you have, of course, minhagim, chad gadya, right? Falling asleep, getting upset, whatever. Those are the minhagim, each family according to its idiosyncrasies.
Getting upset is like a mitzvah.
Getting upset is a minhag. It's Messiah. It was just a joke. Don't worry. Pesach night, you got to be free and relaxed. You're a melech. You're a king. Anybody says anything the night of Pesach, you have to stop, take a breath, talk about triggers, right?
Wait for 61 minutes.
That's always a good idea. But imagine yourself as a king. Imagine I felt like a king, and then respond from that place. In other words, if I really felt like a king, what would my response be? And then that's how you're supposed to respond the night of Pesach. This is good advice, trust me. It's very good advice. Oh, so you have the Kiddush, that's a doiraisa for Shabbos and Yom Tov and Pesach also, right. I'm talking about the unique to the night of Pesach. You're right.
You're saying 4 cups of Durban, one is actually doiraisa.
Oh, so you're saying the first cup is doiraisa because it's Kiddush. So according to many opinions, making Kiddush over wine is rabbinic. Making Kiddush is biblical. I have to remember, Zachar Yom HaShabbos L'Katshai, I have to verbally sanctify and welcome Shabbos. That's Min HaTorah. What about using a cup of wine? That doesn't say in Torah to make Kiddush over wine. So many argue that that's rabbinic.
So when you daven by night.
So when I say Kiddush, I was already Mekayim Kiddush. But you're right, there's a biblical element in Kiddush which exists every single Shabbos as well.
When you don't say by a full and davening, how are you time that verbally?
Well, in Shmoneh Esrei.
Right.
In Shmoneh Esrei, right. Right. V'titen lanu Hashem Elokeinu b'yahava moyadim l'simcha. Mekadesh Yisrael v'azmanam. So we started in davening, and then we do Kiddush at home. Yeah. But in terms of the Seder itself, for Pesach, what is biblical? Only 3 things. Eating the carbon Pesach, which we can't even have to, which we don't even do today. Eating matzah. The time of the Beis HaMikdash, you ate the carbon Pesach, you ate matzah, you ate maror. Eating matzah, even today, is biblical. Right? And telling the story to your children. In fact, if you ask me, what's today biblical about Pesach when we sit at the Seder? What aspects am I doing a mitzvah? What do I do that's a mitzvah min HaTorah? Talking to my children and eating matzah. That's it. Everything else is extra. It's good stuff, but it's extra. Karpas, that's a minhag. Well, it's from the Rabbanan, as we will see. The telling of the story, that's biblical. So there's also the mitzvahs the Rabbanan, like the 4 cups, like reclining and so forth. As we will see, it's called a Seder because the rabbis instituted that we should fulfill the mitzvahs in a Seder. Seder means, of course, in an order. So that's why it came to be called the Seder. And generally, as we will see, the night is divided into 4 sections, and each section is represented by a cup of wine. The cup of wine is like the mechitza, the parsa, the demarcation. We're going from one section to another section. The first section is Kiddush, and we drink 1 cup of wine. The next section is telling the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, starting to say Hallel, and we drink a cup of wine, and we're done. The next section is food. We eat matzah, we eat maror, we have the meal. In the time of the Beis HaMikdash, we eat the carbon Pesach, we bench, and we drink a cup of wine. Section number 3. Section number 4 is Hallel. We finish, we drink a cup of wine. So there's really a very intricate system, and that's why it's called a Seder. There's an order, Seder. If he didn't go up to the Beis HaMikdash and he wasn't in Yerushalayim, there was no replacement because you couldn't bring the meat out of Yerushalayim. So even if somebody shechted it for him, to take the flesh outside of Yerushalayim, it expired. It couldn't be, once it was taken out, it would have to be burnt. You had to remain in the walls of Yerushalayim to eat it. So if you couldn't come, you just did it without the carbon Pesach. Sometimes you would bring a Pesach Sheni. If you were far away and you couldn't make it, you bring a Pesach Sheni. Or if you were Tameh. A person got Tameh. Person touched a corpse. Right? Person was in a house, somebody died, Erev Pesach. There's nothing he can do. He's Tameh. He can't eat the carbon, he can't bring the carbon. So he had a Pesach Sheni. He had Pesach Sheni. But the carbon Pesach was the main staple of the Seder. At the meal, what we have, we call it koirech, right? Our sandwiches are Nebuch very impoverished. We have some lettuce and we have some matzah. But imagine you had lamb chops. It would have been a beautiful sandwich. And we have matzah. Imagine you had pita. It was really, people don't realize the Korban Pesach was like an unbelievable laffa sandwich, because their matzah was like laffa, really, like laffa. Like the Yemenites till today have laffa matzah. They put in lamb chops, good lamb chops, roasted, barbecued on the fire, right? You did it outdoors, and you had your lettuce inside and your horseradish inside. Well, you can't get a better sandwich than that. We're left with matzah. It's a different type of sandwich. Zeichel lemikdash. We don't have that same sandwich anymore. So all of these, so this is really the last stage of Maseches Pesachim, because it's the night of Pesach, the late afternoon and the night of Pesach. So this is really the summation, and it finalizes Masechta Pesachim because it deals with the mitzvahs on Pesach themselves, where the rest of the Masechta is all leading up to Pesach. And the interesting thing is that there's a few pages that deal here with the halachas of Kiddush and Havdalah, not only on Pesach, but all year around, and also the sugya of making brachas before and after you eat if you changed the place of your meal. If I start drinking my coffee here and then I take my coffee upstairs, do I have to make another bracha? All these questions. So in that sense, it's an extremely relevant and practical perik in Shas. The one interesting thing is if you look at your Gemara, let me just see how it's in your Gemara a second. Marer is an interesting thing. Marer was a Dairaisa then, when you had the Korban Pesach. Today, Marer is a Derabanan. Because the mitzvah of Marer is to eat it with the Korban Pesach. To eat it as a sandwich. To eat it together. So then it was biblical. Today it's only rabbinic, according to most opinions, which the Gemara is going to discuss. If you'll see that on the left side, usually we have Rashi on the left side of one page and the right side of the other page. But here, this perik is unique, that in all of the editions of the Talmud, you have two interpretations on the left side, two commentaries. On top is Rashi, and if you'll see right under Rashi on the first page, in the mid-page it says Pirush, you see, Pirush Rabbeinu Shmuel, Talmud Rashi Zal. Who is Rabbeinu Shmuel? He's known as the Rashbam. Rashbam is an acronym, Rabbeinu Shmuel ben Meir, Rashbam. You also have him in Mikrois Doilis Chumash, commentary Rashbam. Rashbam was a grandson, he was a student of Rashi, but he was a grandson of Rashi. Rashi had a few daughters, 3 or 4 daughters, and his son-in-law was Reb Meir, and Reb Shmuel was one of the sons of Reb Meir, who was Rashi's son-in-law. So Rashbam was a grandson of Rashi. His mother was Rashi's daughter. His father was Rashi's son-in-law, Reb Meir. So he's known as Rashbam, Rabbeinu Shmuel ben Meir. He was a grandson of Rashi, and he was a student of Rashi. He grew up at the feet of Rashi. He sat on his lap and learned with him. So he wrote a commentary also to Arvei Pesachim. Why do they print here his commentary? It looks like because Rashi is very, very brief in this chapter, more brief than anywhere else. So that's probably the reason they put in the Rashbam's commentary, because he takes his grandfather's commentary and he develops it and sometimes adds a lot of footnotes, and it's a much more elaborate pirush. Now, many argue that the Rashbam wrote a commentary on most of Shas, or maybe all of Shas, but it was lost, and we don't have it. The only Rashbam that we have is on this Perik Arvei Pesachim, and most of Maseches Baba Basra. If you learn Maseches Baba Basra, Daf Chav Tes Amar Aleph, Rashi stops, and it says Kan Meis Rashi. Here Rashi passed away, or in some places it just says till here is Rashi. For whatever reason in Baba Basra, Rashi stopped at page 29, and from there and on, Rashbam took over till the end of Baba Basra, and that's why it's much longer, Rashbam. Rashi wrote very short, Rashbam wrote very, very long. The Rashbams in Baba Basra are famous. And that's the only 2 Rashbams we have on here on Arvei Pesachim, the last chapter of Pesachim, and much of Baba Basra from page 29, but many say that the Rashbam really wrote a commentary on most of Shas, but every manuscript that survived from those years, he lived in the 1100s, is really a treasure. It wasn't taken for granted, and the Rashbam perhaps didn't survive, and the source for this is that we see that throughout Shas, the Rishonim quote the Rashbam. So it seems like there was some Rashbam that many of them had that we do not have. I just wanted to make that ha'ara, that footnote.
Why is the Rashbam in Baba Basra identified? It's in a different place. It doesn't begin the next parak. It's I believe the sugi over there about the Basel. They have the
Chavtas, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not. It's like almost in the middle.
Yeah. Well, in some texts it says that Rashi passed away.
No, but I'm saying here you have it as a header.
Oh.
Why wouldn't they say it with the
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer.
This is an editorial decision by Art School to put it there? Is that...
No. In all, I think it's in all.
So they would have fixed it.
Yeah. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I can't say for sure, but I think in all published editions of the Talmud, even the oldest ones, you have Rashi and Rashbam together. Wherever you have Rashi, wherever you have commentary, yeah. In all or most of them, yeah. Even in very ancient ones. The printing press, of course, began hundreds of years afterwards. Printing press began in the 1400s, and that was already, Rashi lived in the 1000s. Right, Rashi lived at the end of the 1000s, and the Rashbam was his grandson, so he lived in the 1100s, the 12th century. So there was no printing press for a few hundred years. Everything then was written manuscripts. And they lived in France. Rashi lived in Troyes in France, and in France you had the horrible decrees of burning all the manuscripts of the Talmud and commentaries. One Friday, the 24 wagons of original Gemaras that were burnt in the 1200s. Test Tammuz. So whatever survived is really it's really miraculous. It's not like these manuscripts weren't sheltered and maintained and incubated. There was the fact that it's all here is despite everything, not because of anybody's help. Naturally, nothing should have survived. Even the Gemara is here. The manuscript is here. Okay, so let's begin the Mishnah and. We'll try to move and cover ground here. Zog the Mishnah. Erev Pesachim Samach LaMincha. The Perek is called Arvei Pesachim, even though according to Rashi, the first word is not Arvei, it's Erev. But the Rashbam already has the Girsa Arvei Pesachim, and Tosfos brings both Girsas, Arvei and Erev. So it's known as Arvei Pesachim, but really Rashi believes that it starts off with Erev Pesachim. Erev Pesachim means the day. Erev means the eve of Pesach, right? The day before Pesach. Samach LaMincha, close to the time of Mincha. And that's a very vague term. What's close? An hour, 2 hours, 4 hours? So Rashi says, Kodim LaMincha Ma'at. Samach LaMincha means a little before the time of Mincha. Lo yoichal adam, a person should not eat, at shetechshach, until it gets dark, until nightfall. So already a little before Mincha time, one should not eat until it gets dark. Rashi says, Lo yoichal, kadei sheyoichal matzah shel mitzvah l'tei oven. We want the person should eat the matzah, which is a mitzvah, with appetite, mishum hider mitzvah, for the beautification of the mitzvah. And thus the Mishnah is telling us you should not have a meal already from the time of mincha and a little samach l'mincha, a little before the time of mincha. So Rashi's time is that it's because of hider mitzvah. Now what do we mean by mincha? When we say the word mincha, mincha is basically, important to understand, the afternoon prayer. Mincha spans the time when in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, they can offer the Tamid Shel Bein HaArbayim. The afternoon carbon Tamid could be brought from when? It could be brought from 6.5 hours. That's the time when Mincha begins. Which means, if the sun rises at 6 o'clock, it would be 12:30. We call that the time of Mincha G'dayla. Why is it Mincha G'dayla? Because it's a big Mincha. What makes it a big Mincha? That this day is still big. If you daven mincha 12:30, like we say, Hein oid hayom gadol, the day is still a big day. Mincha Tanna is when? Would be in a day where sunrise is 6, mincha Tanna would be 9.5 hours. So if the 7th hour begins at 12, right? 12 begins the 7th hour. 1 begins the 8th hour. I'm sorry. It would be 9.5 hours. So 9.5 hours would be it would be 3:30, because 12 o'clock is the end of 6 hours, the beginning of the 7th hour, right? Then the 7th hour begins at 1, which begins the 8th hour. And then you have the 9th hour, and you have 9.5 hours. That's the middle of the 10th hour. That would be approximately 3:30 if the day begins at sunrise. Again, we divide the hours not in even units of 60 minutes, but what's called shayas manias, which means seasonal hours. You take the daytime and you divide it into 12 sections. Whatever the hour is, it could be more than 60 minutes, it could be less than 60 minutes. It happens to be the Pesach time. An hour is usually 60 minutes because that's the time, the equinox, when sunrise is approximately 6 o'clock a.m. But of course, in summer days, when the day is much longer, so then the hour will be more than 60 minutes. And winter, when the day is shorter, less than 12 hours, so an hour will be less than 60 minutes. So these hours are not hours of 60 minutes, but hours called sha'izmani, as seasonal hours, which means the hour could fluctuate time of the year. So whenever that is, mincha ktana is 6.5 hours from the beginning of the day. Mincha gdoila is 6.5 hours from the beginning of the day. Mincha ktana is 9.5 hours from the beginning of the day. And the reason is because they used to usually offer the carbon tamid 9.5 hours from the beginning of the day, which if the day started at 6, it would be 9:30. Because 12 o'clock is the end of 6 hours. You go 7, 8, 9 is 3 o'clock. 9.5 is 3:30. That's called mincha ktana. Why is it called mincha ktana? It's a small mincha. What makes it a small mincha? Because afterwards you don't have much time to the day. You only have 2.5 hours left to the day. If you have a mincha at 3:30, the day ends at 6, sunset, and that's the time of mincha. So when he says don't eat Erev Pesach samach lemincha, what does that mean? It means from 12 o'clock p.m. Because mincha starts at 12:30, samach lemincha would mean a little bit before mincha, not an hour, but a half an hour before mincha. That's when you shouldn't eat at shetechshach until it gets dark. I should just add that really min ha-Torah you could bring the carbon tamid at 12. The Chachamim pushed it off to 12:30, so they shouldn't come to make mistakes. Because 12 o'clock you could get confused. 12:30, so that's why they made the tamid from 12. That's why mincha starts 12:30. So sometimes Shabbos people want to daven mincha early, right? You don't daven by chatzos. You daven a half an hour after chatzos. So if chatzos is 12, it's 12:30, right? These days it's like whatever, 12:40, 12:50.
Carbon tamid goes without bread, right?
Yeah, carbon tamid is the daily lamb that they offered in the morning and in the afternoon. From when? 12:30 and usually 3:30.
No bread, no flour.
No bread, no.
No flour. Or flour.
Yeah. No bread, no. No bread, no.
When the Mishnah talks about mincha, it means mincha katana, yeah?
I'm sorry, what?
When the Mishnah is talking mincha, smoch mincha, it's talking about...
Oh, so the Gemara is going to discuss which mincha do we mean. Do we mean mincha gdoila, which means you can't eat from 12 o'clock, as I just said, or do we mean mincha ktana, which means you can't eat from 3 o'clock? So the Gemara is going to discuss later Daf Kuf Zayin, I think, Kuf Zayin, yeah? And the Gemara is going to conclude that it's actually mincha ktana. So it's not 12, you would think it's 12, but it's not 12, it's going to be 3. In other words, you have to stop eating a little time before mincha ktana, which is going to be a half an hour. That means approximately 3 o'clock, you're not supposed to be eating. Now, the question is, what does eating mean? What does eating mean? Does eating mean anything? Can I have an orange? Right. Can I nash? Okay. So Erev Pesach, unless you're in a hotel, there was never anything to eat in the house, right? Erev Pesach, everybody is hungry. Nobody knows why, but everybody is starving Erev Pesach, yeah? So there's a source for it. They try to keep you hungry. But the truth is, what does it mean that you're not allowed to eat? Right? So, according to many, as we'll soon see in the Gemara, it actually means bread. In other words, a lo yochel means a real meal. Now, it doesn't mean chametz, because you anyway can't eat chametz at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It also can't mean matzah, because you're not supposed to eat matzah on Erev Pesach. So actually, as Tosfos explains, and we're going to discuss later, it's talking about matzah shira, which means matzah that's kneaded with mei peris, like apple juice or orange juice. It's matzah that's not kneaded with water, it's kneaded with other beverages, and that type of matzah you can't use for the Seder. So it could be, right? So therefore, such a matzah, according to many, you can eat Erev Pesach, and that's what the Gemara that's what the Mishnah is referring to, and also referring to other satiating foods like 5 grains, cakes, like food that's made from the 5 grains, of course, not chametz. That would also be, but as we will see later, if you want to eat some fruits, you want to eat some vegetables or dishes that are not very satiating, that is fine to eat. And this goes ad shetechshach, till it gets dark, which means till after sunset, till nightfall, when the stars come out and the night begins. Okay. Sagt the Mishnah weiter, afilu ani shebi Yisrael, even a poor man, lo yoichal ad sheyosef, should not eat on the night of Pesach until he reclines, until he's in a state of a seder, because this is how the royal people used to eat, and they used to have little couches. You know how they used to eat then? Everybody would have a little couch and a little table in front of them. Yes. So you would recline on your bed, like literally, you had like a couch, mamash, a little couch, like these love couches, these smaller couches. You would sit on your couch with a little table and you would recline, and that's how you would eat. So he says, even a poor man who's not used to this type of eating, he has to make sure that the night of Pesach he eats behaseba. I saw one of the Mefarshim says, why did it say Afilu Ani should be Yisrael? What do you think, an Ani who's a goy? I mean, obviously, a Gentile is not learning Masechta Pesachim, and he doesn't have to do the Seder. Yeah. So what's Afilu Ani? What Ani who's not a Jew? I mean, you could say on everything. Why doesn't it say before Lo Yochel Yisrael Achatech? It says Lo Yochel Adam. It means it means a Jew. Here it says Afilu Ani should be Yisrael. So I saw one of the Mefarshim says that the Mishnah is actually explaining why he should eat Behaseba, because he has to remember that he's a Jew. The Gemara says that Kol Yisrael b'nei melachim heim. Every Jew has to see himself as a prince. In Zohar it says not only a prince but a melech. So the Ani should remember he's poor, but he's an Ani should be Yisrael. Because he's an Ani should be Yisrael, he's a Jewish Ani, so therefore he has to see himself as a king. He has to see himself as a prince. Sometimes, what?
It's not comfortable. You're supposed to be close.
That
needs to be comfortable.
So you got to make it comfortable.
Yeah, that little couch should be comfortable.
You got to make it comfortable. Maybe bring another chair, take 2 big pillows. Azai.
I'm not used to eat like that. I'm used to eat like a schmuck, like a schmuck chair. Feels like a king like that.
How about washing the wood?
Plan your Haseba before.
Practice makes practice. Practice.
And the Gaboyim of Tzedakah should not make sure he doesn't get less than 4 cups of wine. Even if he's so poor that he actually eats from the platters. Meaning, there were 2 types of poor people. There were 2 people who had a few meals, but they didn't have enough money, so they would get money for tzedakah. But then there were people who mamash didn't even have they didn't have a next meal. They didn't have a meal, so they would get from the tamchui, which means they actually got food, like a soup kitchen. Every community had a soup kitchen where you would actually come from meals, right? So he says, even somebody who's supporting himself from tamchui, in order to get tamchui, it means you don't even have 2 meals available. If you have 2 meals available, you can't go to the soup kitchen until they're finished and you don't have any more. Even this Jew needs to get 4 cups of wine on the night of Pesach. You can't say, Mamish has nothing, but he has to get 4 cups of wine. That's the Chiddush. Not only is he a poor man, but even if he eats from the tamchui, from the platter. Rashi says, Afilu ani shebisol lo yochel b'leili psachim at sheyosef kederech b'nei chayrin zecher lecheros. Why? This is because of the freedom, b'mita on a bed, v'ala shulchan with a table. B'mita is the bed, v'ala shulchan with a table. Arba koises, keneged arba l'shoynei geula hamurim b'golas mitzrayim, v'yitzesi eschem, v'yitzalti eschem, v'galti eschem, v'lakachti eschem, Parshas v'Erev. There's 4 languages of redemption that the Rebbeinu Shalom uses. I will take you out, I will save you, I will redeem you, and I will take you, I will retrieve you. In Parshas v'Erev, from here, the Chazal instituted a basis for experiencing 4 types of redemption, represented by the 4 languages, represented by the 4 cups of wine. He's not just poor, he's very poor. If you already have 2 meals, you're not allowed to eat from the soup kitchen because you have 2 meals. Only if you don't even have 2 meals. So this represents how poor he is. Nonetheless, he can take the 4 cups of wine, and that's the chiddush of the Mishnah, that everybody has to drink 4 cups of wine, even on Ani Shabi Yisrael. So an interesting thing I once saw. It says in Parshas Beshalach, right? Vahi Beshalach Parei Sa'am, v'loy nacham Elokim derech Eretz Plishtim. Hashem didn't lead them through the Philistines because he was afraid that there's going to be a war and they're going to go back. Instead, Vayasev Elokim Sa'am derech Hamidbar. Instead, Hashem took them in a circle. Vayasev, he took them in a circle through the desert, a longer route from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael. So the Medrash says in the word Vayasev, Mikan, from here we learn that every Jew needs to eat Behaseba, even on Ani Shabi Yisrael. Every Jew needs to eat Behaseba. He has to eat recline. The question, of course, is Vayasev doesn't come from the word Haseba. Vayasev here is like from the word Sivuv. A dreidel is called Svivon. Saviv means around. And he took them around. He went in a roundabout way, Vayasev. Instead of going straight, Vayasev. But the Medrash connects it to Haseba, that every Jew has to eat Behaseba. So one of the Mefarshim says, I think it's the Eitz Yosef on Medrash Rabbah, he says that the pshat is that Vayasev Elokim Sa'am, he took them, basically it represents leaving slavery and going into redemption, because slaves were never given the luxury to sit and eat in a relaxed way. Even if they sat for a few moments, they had to work. And usually they would eat standing. So the definition of freedom is that you could sit, you could relax, you own yourself, nobody owns you. So that's why when Hashem takes them out of Egypt, he changes from V'loi Nochem to Vayasev. It could have said Vayanchem Elikim, just like you said V'loi Nochem, which would say Vayanchem. Why did you change to the word Vayasev? To teach you that it's not just you left Egypt geographically, you have to leave Egypt emotionally. Sometimes you're not in a place of slavery, but emotionally you're a slave. You don't feel like you're a prince, you don't feel like you're a king. So it says Vayasev to teach that the accomplishment here was that there could be the concept of a Seder. And even an Ani Shabbat Yisrael needs to do this on, in other words, never look at yourself as too poor to be a free person. Right? You should never look at yourself that I'm so poor, I'm so impoverished, whether it's financially or psychologically, and therefore I can't be a free person. That's the idea. Even on Ani Shabbat Yisrael, you're still entitled and you're obligated, so to speak, to be free, to be a ben chayrin, to understand your dignity in the eyes of Hashem.
I don't understand the initial. Hashem took us out in a roundabout way, so because we had a slave mentality and we were subject to being.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the reason that the Torah changes from Vayanchem to Vayasev is to teach this extra message. That part of leaving Egypt means that you're going to eat like a free person, because slaves would eat standing or sitting, but never reclining. They were always in this.
My question is, how do you recline on the way out? I don't get the connection. I don't get the analogy.
The Ksaf Sofer says that if they would have gone straight, right, through Gaza, they would go from Egypt to Gaza, so then the route would have been through civilization. Now the route was through the desert. How are you going to eat in a desert? You're going to eat in a desert, Vayasev, because you're going to rely on God. He's going to feed you. There's going to be manna from heaven. And that's the source of Heseba. Heseba means that you could really recline without a worry. You could just relax. Why? Because Vayasev Elikim Asam Derech Hamid. When a person has bitachon, so then even if he looks like he's going into a desert, he could be very relaxed. He could recline. He took them in a roundabout way.
Ruth helped us to relax.
To be able to relax, yeah. Zacharti la chesed nurayich avas kluloisayich lechtech achrei b'midbar beretz lo yizrua, right? The concept of you're in my arms and I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. In other words, you approach the day, instead of saying, I have 100 things to do today, I don't know how to do it. You sit down by your desk and you turn to Hashem and you say, okay, let's work this out together. What do you need now? In other words, you have a partner. You become a conduit. You don't have to take the full responsibility of life for yourself, because then it's very taxing. It's a mindfulness, yeah. Yeah.
We need Shabbat.
Yeah. Shabbat, right. We will still be emotional, yeah. Yeah. So the Vayasev, the Ksaf Sofer says, Vayasev is on Derech HaMidbar. I just remembered the Vayasev through the midbar is what allows a Jew to have a Seder. Even a poor Jew. He says, how can I recline? What do you mean? You know how many bills I have? The bank wants to take everything away. What do you want me to recline? I'm a poor man. So you have to remember the Jews were in the desert. Where did they eat? It was manna from heaven. In other words, you have to realize that God is with you. You got to do what you have to do. I can't just sit and relax, and wait for the manna to come down from the ceiling. And these times you have to do what you have to do. But the point is that there's a partnership here. You're not on your own. You're not in solitariness. You're not lonely.
How did they have matzah the second year, the third year? In the middle?
They had flour. Where did they bake matzah?
Where did they have flour from?
They ground the mud. They thought it was bread and they ground it.
No.
Oh.
How did they have flour?
How did they bake matzah? How did they bake matzah in the desert? You're saying, where did they get grain that grew?
They had money. They had the goods.
They had what?
Money.
To buy from who?
No.
There was neighboring nations.
It's like he said. They saw the mud. It's sweet.
You saying they wanted the man. It said whatever you wanted to taste in the man, you could taste, so they decided to taste matzah in it. And it certainly wasn't chametz, huh?
You had to bring from Kavanos and everything.
Yeah, you're right. But pashtus, you want to know, there's no grain. Grain doesn't grow in the Sinai, in the desert.
It made me think, because he said that they went through...
It's a good question. It's a good question. It's a good question. Huh? So
no, it can't grow so much.
They grew.
it could be some stuff grew, and it could be there were communities around, there were nations around. So it could be they did some commerce. They went to buy stuff. That's what I would think. And you could buy, grain. You could buy a huge quantity and just store it. Could be even they took from Egypt. I mean, a lot of scenarios.
They wouldn't have needed them on.
Huh?
And they wouldn't have needed them on, because they could have made their own...
You're saying, so why did they need the mun? Why they need the man?
Because they were saving the grain for the matzah.
No, they were saving the money for the matzah. Well,
Matzah is very expensive.
Why couldn't they buy enough grain for everybody to eat? Well, you had 4 million people. You had 4 million people. So to buy grain for 4 million people every day is not simple. You understand what I'm saying? But for 8 days of Pesach, 7 days of Pesach, you could. And you don't need matzah 7 days of Pesach. You can eat man on Pesach. They just needed a kazayas for the Seder. I think I'm telling you a good vart. To have grain for 4 million people is not simple. You know that, right? It's not simple. Even today it's not, certainly then. Where are you getting grain for 4 million people? You didn't have endless grain. Every nation needed grain. They would sell you a little bit. So for karbonis, yeah. Lechem aponim. Right? And maybe they grew a little bit also. Maybe they could grow a little bit. But so much that this should be enough for people to eat 2 meals a day was impossible, probably. So they didn't have bread, so they were afraid they're going to starve, so Hashem sent them man. Thank you for the question. Zog de heilige Gemara, Ma'ir ya Arvei Pesachim, was epes Arvei Pesachim, afilu Arvei Shabbos, v'yamim tovim nami. Why only? Why do you say Arvei Pesachim? Even Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov, there's also a problem in eating, as we're going to explain. The Tanya, we learned to Braisa, lo yoichal adam Arvei Shabbos v'yamim tovim and amincho l'mayla k'deshi yikonis l'Shabbos k'shu taiva. A person shouldn't eat on Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov, the eve of Shabbos and the eve of Yom Tov, from the time of Mincha and later, in order to go into Shabbos with an appetite. It's an interesting expression. You should go into Shabbos when you're full of taiva. Kshahu taiva, when you have an appetite, when you have a craving, a yearning. That's what they want. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda said that. Rabbi Yossi says, no, oichel v'hoilech at shetechshach. On Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tov, you can eat till it gets dark, till Shabbos comes, till sunset. So what do we see according to Rabbi Yehuda? That every Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov, you're not allowed to eat from the time of Mincha. So why does our Mishnah tell us, Arvei Pesachim, Samuch LaMincha Lo Yoichal? It's not Arvei Pesachim, it sounds like it's a unique thing on Erev Pesach. Amar Reb Huna, you're right. You're right. Lo tzricha, the only reason our Mishnah has to say it is, Rabbi Yossi, you're right. This Mishnah was authored following the view of Rabbi Yossi. This Mishnah was authored by the author who believed that Rabbi Yossi was right. And therefore, every Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov, you could eat a whole afternoon. And Erev Pesach, you can't. You're right. It's only according to Rabbi Yossi.
So we say Stam Mishnah, not like Rabbi Meir, not Rabbi Yossi? He's a Stam Mishnah.
Fine. Zol Zayin.
So he holds like Rabbi Yossi?
But he holds like Rabbi Yossi. He holds like Rabbi Yossi. In other words, the Mishnah is telling us, Hanemili b'Arvei Shabbos v'Yomim Tovim. Rabbi Yossi says that in the Braisa only Erev Shabbos and Yom Tov. Aval b'Erev Pesach, mishum dechiyuv de matzah moida. Erev Pesach, because of the obligation of matzah, Rabbi Yossi concedes and says, do not eat a meal close to the time of Minchas, that you should eat the matzah with taiva, with te'ava, and with appetite. So Rabbi Huna resolved the problem quite simply. He said, Arvei Pesachim, we asked, every Erev Shabbos. And the answer is no. Erev Shabbos, no, because we're following Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda would disagree, you're right. Rabbi Yehuda would say every Erev Shabbos. But according to Rabbi Yossi, the Chiddush is only Erev Pesach. That's the Chiddush of our Mishnah. Why Taka Erev Pesach different? The Gemara says 3 words, Mishum Chiyuva de Matzah, because of the obligation of matzah. What does the Gemara mean by this? What the Gemara means is that biblically, Minat Torah, you're obligated to eat matzah on the night of Pesach. And the Torah, therefore, the Chachamim wanted you should eat this matzah with an appetite, and therefore they told you, I don't want you to fill up Erev Pesach in the afternoon. Are you going to tell me, what about eating Shabbos and Yom Tov? Right? Eating Shabbos and Yom Tov. So here there's a few interesting things to remember. Number one, it doesn't say anywhere in Torah that on Shabbos and Yom Tov you have to eat a meal. Right? On Pesach it says, Be'erev Toich. I know it's surprising, but you could look through the whole Chumash. It doesn't say anywhere that there's a mitzvah in our Torah to eat on Shabbos and Yom Tov. It's true that the Nevi'im told us, Yeshaya, we say it before Kiddush, V'karasa la Shabbos, oineg. Shabbos has to be delightful, okay? We interpret, usually people are delighted with eating. So it's not a mitzvah min ha-Torah. The Nevi'im said v'karasa l'Shabbos. Now there is Kiddush. Kiddush has been ha-Torah, but not the wine. Kiddush min HaTorah is to verbally say Kiddush. You don't have to drink wine min HaTorah according to most poskim. So even drinking the wine is not min HaTorah. But there's something even more fundamental. And that is, let's say somebody has pleasure by not eating. I know it's hard to find, but there are people who really like to detox. They like to detox the body, and they like going days without eating. There are people who are health-oriented. I'm sure you know some people. It's like, they're more sensitive, and they're not gluttonous, and they don't get so attracted by food. And when they were 2 years old, they didn't experience every time they were crying, you threw food in them. And when they went to school at 3, the definition of a prize was not more food and more food. By us, definition of you learn something, you know something, food. So from the earliest age, we learn that food equals Mashiach. And if food doesn't equal Mashiach, it's because you don't have enough food. You have to have more food, and then it will be the gematria of Mashiach. And if it's still not the gematria of Mashiach, it's because you didn't have enough food. So that's one type. But what about a person who doesn't have that? Their bodies are different bodies. My mother-in-law is a Baal Tshuva, and she raised her children in a diet called macrobiotic. You know what macrobiotic is? Yeah? Okay, so my wife hasn't eaten sugar for years, from when she was born, for many years. She once came home from Shul with a lollipop, and her mother almost lost it because her girl got a lollipop, right? Now tell us Brooklyn kids that getting a lollipop is a desecration of Judaism. That was Judaism. You said psukim, you went to daven, you got lollipops, you got popcorn, you got potato chips. And it's interesting. Many people, we crave sugar, but some people, they don't. So what's the halacha if your oinig is to fast? And the answer is, you fast on Shabbos. You fast. In other words, there's no mitzvah to eat on Shabbos. There's a mitzvah to have oinig on Shabbos. If my oinig is not eating, then I don't eat. On the contrary, I fast. That's my oinig.
Why do you make such a big deal about the 3 meals? Isn't it based on...
Because it's not based, no. The Chachamim said to have meals based on the Nevi'im, oinig. But again, the mitzvah is not the eating. The mitzvah is the oinig. By matzah, the mitzvah is to eat matzah. That's the difference, you understand? So that's why by Shabbos, even though it's a mitzvah to eat Shabbos, but it's a mitzvah in oinig. It's not the mitzvah, the eating itself. And if the oinig is not to eat, it's fine. And it's not also min HaTorah, it's only medivrei Nevi'im. Even that. Mashenkin by matzah, there's a biblical mitzvah to eat the eating of the matzah. And that's what they wanted, that the eating should be with full, so to speak, full kavanah, full presence. As Rashi says, hidur mitzvah. And some Rishonim even say, even more than this, that if you really, what they call in Yiddish fressing, if you really eat a lot on Erev Pesach, and by the time the matzah comes, your stomach is full, it may not even be called achila, it's called achila gasa. Achila gasa means when you're stuffed, it's almost, and you have to shove it down your throat, you're not even yoitza, the inyan of achila. Rashi says it's a hidur mitzvah, I guess he's not afraid that people are going to eat so much. But that's also a concern, that you're not even yoitza the mitzvah of achila. And by Shabbos, it's not an issue. If you're nauseous on Shabbos and eating is just going to cause you the agony, you don't have to eat.
So when Pesach comes out on Shabbos, then you can't come on to your own right? You have to.
Right. Very good, yeah. Very good. So Rabbi Yossi holds there's no isser to eat Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov. In other words, you can eat. Shabbos is going to come and you won't have an appetite. So you won't have an appetite. So what? You'll be comfortable without an appetite. But by Erev Pesach, everybody agrees, Mishum Chiyuv de Matzah. Okay. Even though Rabbi Yehuda holds every Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov also not. Rav Papa says, Afilu Tamer Rabbi Yehuda. No. Our Mishnah go even according to Rabbi Yehuda. And he gives here a very interesting diuk, and it shows us how you have to be attentive. Hasim ba'arvei Shabbos v'yamim tovim min ha-mincha l'maylahu da'asir. Samach l'mincha shari. In the previous brayse it says you shouldn't eat Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov min ha-mincha l'mayla, from mincha. But before mincha you could. But Erev ha-Pesach afilu samach l'mincha nami asir. There's a big difference. Rabbi Yehuda holds every Erev Shabbos you're not allowed to eat from the time of mincha. If mincha starts 3:30, it'll be from 3:30. Here it says samach l'mincha, not min ha-mincha. Close to mincha, that means it goes backward. The Isra Erev Pesach is longer than the Isra every Erev Shabbos and every Yom Tov. So it's not a contradiction. It's not the same creature. It's a different chiyuv. According to Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Huna Taka Min HaMincha L'Mayla is talking about according to Rabbi Yehuda, and Daka according to Rabbi Yossi, it's only Arvei Pesachim. According to Rav Papa, even Rabbi Yehuda would agree. Our Mishnah goes even according to Rabbi Yehuda, because Erev Pesach there's a chumrah that doesn't exist in other times. Half an hour. Frag the Gemara, Erev Shabbos samuch lamincha shari? Really? And according to Rabbi Yehuda, Erev Shabbos before mincha, you're allowed to eat? Because it's before mincha? Vatanya, we have a brayse, lo yoichal adam be'erev Shabbos v'yom tovim b'teisha shoyus alamaylik d'shiyikonis l'Shabbos k'shu taiva divri Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says you shouldn't eat Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tov from 9 hours, which is a half an hour before mincha, in order to go into Shabbos with an appetite. Rabbi Yossi Amar oichal v'oilech at shetechshach. You can eat till it's dark, according to Rabbi Yehuda. So we see that even according to Rabbi Yehuda, Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov, the prohibition to eat starts when? Samuch lemincha, not only from mincha, but samuch lemincha half an hour before. So Rav Papa seems wrong. Rav Papa says that what? That only Erev Pesach you can't eat samuch lemincha. But this brayse clearly quotes Rabbi Yehuda about every Erev Shabbos and every Erev Yom Tov. Amar Mazutra said, Man leimal under mitaratztehi. Who says that this brayse that we just quoted is correct? Dilma mishabashtahi. Maybe it's erroneous, maybe it's a mistake. Maybe it has to be mitesha shoyus or mechza olamayla, like the first brayse. In other words, Marzutra says we have an inconsistency between two brayses. He says, yeah, one has to be mended. So how do you know you have to mend the first to comply with the second? Maybe mend the second brayse to comply with the first. And it's a much better position to do that. You know why? Because if we do that, if we fix the second to comply with the first, then our Mishnah could go according to Rabbi Yehuda also. And we could say that Arvei Pesachim is a chiddush even according to Rabbi Yehuda. If we don't fix the second Mishnah, then we are forced to say that our Mishnah is rejecting the view of Rabbi Yehuda. And it's only according to the view of Rabbi Yossi. So Mazutra says, let's embrace Rav Papa's position by amending the second brayse. That Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tov, the Isser is only from 9.5 hours, not from 9 hours, meaning from the time of Mincha. Amalei Mereimar. Mereimar says to Mazutra, V'itei Rav Yemar. Other says it was Rav Yemar. Anoi kloy lepirkei de Rav Pinchas barei de Rabami. I was once. I ended up at a shir, at a lecture. Pirkei is a lecture, a shir of Rav Pinchas, the son of Rabami. V'kam Tanna, and one sage stood up, somebody who knew the Mishnayos. V'tani kamei, and he said the brayse. According to our version, Mitesha Shoyus Alamayla, V'kibla Mine, and Rav Pinchas accepted it without correcting it. Rav Pinchas, who knew the brayses, heard one of the sages quote this brayse and say 9 hours, not 9.5 hours, and he did not correct it. In other words, the second brayse is right. So, if so, this contradicts Rav Papa, because the brayse clearly says that Rabbi Yehuda says Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tov already samach lemincha, you can't eat. So how can you say that Rav Papa was right, that our Mishnah is according to Rabbi Yehuda? That's not true, because if our Mishnah is according to Rabbi Yehuda, then it wouldn't say Arvei Pesachim, because every Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov, right? You can't eat samach lemincha. Ela machvarte k'de Reb Huna. And therefore, the right answer is like Reb Huna, that our Mishnah is following Rabbi Yossi, who says that every Erev Shabbos and every Erev Yom Tov you could eat, and only Arvei Pesachim you have to stop eating in the afternoon. Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not only Arvei Pesachim, it's every Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov, as Rabbi Yossi, as Reb Huna explained, and that's the answer that we embrace, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's no difference in Arvei Pesachim and other Arvei Shabbos and Yom Tovim. And when the first brayse says Min HaMincha Olamayla, that you're not allowed to eat Erev Shabbos, it means Samuch LaMincha. It doesn't mean Min HaMincha, it means the time of Mincha, even before Mincha, and that way everything is consistent. Rabbi Yehuda believes that it goes on every Friday and every Erev Yom Tov. Rabbi Yossi says it's only Arvei Pesach. So the Gemara says, Ule Rav Huna mi nicha. According to Reb Huna, it does make sense. Va'amar Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yirmiyah said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. V'item Amar Rabbi Abo Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. And others say Rabbi Avo said this in the name of Rabbi Yossi, in the name of Rabbi Chanina. Halachic Rabbi Yehuda be'erev Shabbat Pesach. V'halachic Rabbi Yossi be'erev Shabbos. The halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda erev Pesach. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi erev Shabbos. Now, what do we see from here? Halachic Rabbi Yehuda be'erev Pesach miklal de polig Rabbi Yossi b'travayu. It sounds like Rabbi Yossi argues about both Sai erev Shabbos and say Erev Pesach. Rabbi Yochanan was quoted as saying, when it comes to Erev Pesach, halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. When it comes to Erev Shabbos, halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. What does this sound like? They're arguing about both. So when it comes to Erev Pesach, we say Rabbi Yehuda is right. When it comes to Erev Shabbos, we say Rabbi Yossi is right. If Rabbi Yossi would agree to Rabbi Yehuda on Erev Pesach, so it's not on Erev Pesach Rabbi Yehuda is right, on Erev Pesach they both agree. The fact that Rabbi Yochanan said that Erev Shabbos the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, and Erev Pesach the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, what does this mean? That Rabbi Yossi is arguing on both Say Erev Shabbos, Say Erev Pesach. And Erev Pesach, we're going like Rabbi Yehuda. If this is the case, it means even Erev Pesach, Rabbi Yossi holds, you're allowed to eat till it gets dark. So how can Rabbi Yehuda say that our Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Yossi when Rabbi Yossi disagrees with the Mishnah? So you have to say our Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Yehuda. But then why does the Mishnah say Arvei Pesachim? It's every Erev Shabbos and every Erev Yom Tov. Gewaldige Shaila. So the Gemara answers, Loi, you misunderstood what Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Chanan just said. Halacha miklal de pligi b'hafsaka. They're arguing about Erev Pesach, but not about this issue. The issue of not eating in the afternoon is universal. Rabbi Yehuda agrees, Rabbi Yossi agrees. It's not the question. There is another argument between them. What's the other argument? It's called the argument of hafsaka. What's the argument? Let's say I started a meal Erev Pesach 11 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock, before Mincha, an hour before Mincha. I was allowed to. It's enough time. And I continue the meal. And I continue until it gets dark. What happens now? Do I have to be mafsik the meal or not? On this question, not if you're allowed to eat in the afternoon for Mincha. If you're eating a meal, Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tov, Erev Pesach, yeah. Person makes a chasana. Purim is Friday. Yeah, you have a meal, a big meal. It comes Shabbos. What do? Do you have to stop or not? It's a big question in Halacha. They used to make weddings on Friday, you know. Purim is on Friday. You have the Sudas Purim. You didn't do it in the morning. You do it in the afternoon. You're a little tipsy and you want to continue till Shabbos. What's the halacha now? What about Erev Pesach? That's the argument. It's not this argument. You're mixing up two things. It's about hafsaka. And he says, what do I mean? We'll finish with this. The Tanya, the Brisa says, Mafsikin l'Shabbosos. Rabbi Yehuda says if you start a meal Erev Shabbos, even early, you're allowed to. You start at 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and you go and go and go. And it gets dark. It's shkia. Stop. Divri Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Omer ein mafsikin. Rabbi Yossi says because you started when you were allowed to, you could continue going after it's dark. You'll finish, you'll bench, and then you'll make Kiddush. You have to make Kiddush. It's Shabbos. You don't have to stop the meal. Very interesting. Ma'aseh Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. It's a ma'aseh. Shimon ben Gamliel. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, shoyim mesubin ba'aku. They had a meal Friday in Aku. 3 people. Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi. V'kodash aleim hayoim. They look out the window. It's shkia. It's sunset. Shabbos came in. It's time for Kiddush. Kodash aleim. Amalei Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel turns to Rabbi Yossi and he says, Beribi. Beribi is a euphemism for the Gadol Adar, the great sage of the generation they used to call Beribi. Why? Because it's 2 words. Av, Rebbe. The father, my teacher. They just used to delete the Av, like Yamelke, Yorim Mekel, Av Tzolachas, right? Av Tzolachas. They got rid of the Aleph. So Beribi was the father, my teacher. It was the Gadol Hadar, the great Adar, they called Beribi or Berabi. Beribi. Ritzoincha nafsik v'necho shedivrei Yehuda chavereinu. Rabbi Yehuda is sitting there. They're in the middle of a meal. Rabbi Yossi holds you could continue. Rabbi Yehuda says you got to stop. You got to bench. Shabbos. Shkia. You're not allowed to eat anymore, even though you started. So Rabbi Shimon Gamliel turns to Rabbi Yossi and he says, maybe for our friend Yehuda, to be concerned for him, to be cautious, to be sensitive, nechush, to be fear, we should stop. Amar loy, Rabbi Yossi says, B'chol yoyim v'yoyim ata mechavev dvarei lefnei Rabbi Yehuda, v'achshav ata mechavev divrei Rabbi Yehuda b'fanai. Every day you cherish my words over Rabbi Yehuda. Today suddenly you're going to embrace Rabbi Yehuda over me. Hagam lichboy shesamalko imi baboyis. What words? You're going to conquer the queen with me in the house. Now you know where this verse comes from. Achashverosh is drunk, and he comes back from the porch, and Haman is on the bed pleading with Esther for his life. And Achashverosh says, Hagam lichbosh amalka imi babayis. Mela, I left the palace. You do shtick. But with me in the house, you're going to touch my wife? And he goes crazy, and Haman gets hung, right? Haman gets executed. So Rabbi Yossi used these words. Lichbosh hamalka imi babayis. In other words, you throw, as we would say, you throw me under the bus. Imi babayis to choose Rabbi Yehuda. Now, it's quite an interesting expression. I saw one of the Mefarshim says that Shabbos is called a malka. Shabbos is called a queen, right? L'chadoidi likras kala, b'nei Shabbos nekabla. Shabbos malka, so Shabbos is the queen. So lichbosh is hamalka. This is a halacha of Shabbos. Do you have to stop the meal or not stop the meal? So lichbosh malki, you want to take away hilchah Shabbos, you want to take away the malka from me. Lichbosh is hamalka, conquer the Shabbos queen. Imi babai is with me in the house. Amar loy, Reb Shimon Gamliel said, okay, imkein loy nafsek. We won't stop the meal. Shema yiru atalmidim v'yikbu halacha l'deiros. Remember, these are the Gdolei Hadar. The students are going to see, and they're going to make the halacha like Rabbi Yehuda forever. In other words, initially, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel wasn't afraid. He said, out of respect to Rabbi Yehuda, let's do what he wants. Why? Because people will say, okay, they're being machmer. But when Rabbi Yossi made a protest and said, you're taking away, you're changing Hilchot Shabbos, so he said, okay, I understand. Amru, lo izazu misham chakavu halacha Rabbi Yossi. They didn't move from there until they made the halacha like Rabbi Yossi, that if you start your Suda in a permissible hour, and then the day becomes holy sunset, you could continue the meal. So this is what the Braisa was saying, that all year around halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. Erev Pesach halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. They weren't talking about Erev Pesach not eating in the afternoon by mincha. This halacha, that Erev Pesach, you have to stop your meal. You can't continue the meal into Pesach. Where other days of the year, Erev Shabbos, the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, that you could continue. So it's b'chlal not a contradiction. And here the Gemara is going to get into the sugya, which we're going to learn next year. This whole sugya, what do we taka do if we have a meal, Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tov, and Shabbos and Yom Tov comes, the whole sugya known as Peiris Mapa Makadosh, that the Gemara is now going to explore the next piece. So Reb Huna's Mishnah works. 1 second, a bit.
Meaning what? You have to stop?
Lo yoichel at means you don't start a meal in the afternoon. 3:30, 3 o'clock, you don't start a meal. But let's say I started a meal at 2 o'clock, Erev Pesach. Rabbi Yossi says, go. If you started Beheta, you could continue. I'll give you an example. Purim is Friday, I told you, yeah? You have to have a meal on Purim, right? So let's say you start eating, you have a meal in the afternoon, and it gets tipsy, and you go, and Shabbos comes, what do you have to do? Do you have to stop or not? It's a big question.
Right. So meaning what? You don't start at all?
You don't start. We're not talking about start. We're talking about not start. Start, everybody holds you don't start a meal. But what if you started when you were allowed to? You started in the morning, or you started early afternoon, before the Zman of Mincha. So Rabbi Yossi says you could continue.
Started later.
Yeah, because it was an Isser. You started Be'isser. But if you didn't start Be'isser, you started Beheter. Rabbi Yehuda says you have to stop, no difference. You started Beheter, but you have to stop. And Rabbi Yossi says you don't have to. Okay.
There's no time when we eat matzah, correct? At night.
How does halachic respond to courtesy in this case? I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay, we'll see. We're gonna address that. What's the mechanism?
No, but I'm saying, how could it ever respond to courtesy? If he wants to give him a kavod, his colleague, that's fine.
Oh. Because it's not a prohibition to stop. It's a chumrah.
So you tell the gadol hador, someone who's lesser than you, we want to conform this event to the way he learns instead of you.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
Reb Shimon Gamliel says, Rabbi Yehuda was a colleague. He was also from the great giants. This is because he's at the meal, out of respect to him, it would be uncomfortable because they would continue eating and Rabbi Yehuda would sit like this. Yeah, it would be disrespectful.
But you have that Maisa that you've told between the Gedolei Adar that one would milka, we could have davened milka, and I think the One said,
There's a mice I heard that there was a Agudas Yisrael conference, Knessia G'dola, one of these, the summits, the conventions in Europe. And the Chafetz Chaim was sitting, and the Belzer Rov was sitting. The Alta Belzer Rov, Aaron Rekeach. The Belzer Mincha is a very late Mincha, right? The Galiciana Minchas, because they follow a different sunset. Remember, we learned in the beginning of Pesachim, there's two sunsets. There's the regular sunset and the tam sunsets. So they daven mincha, right, much, much later, because their sunset is not when the sun sets, it's when it gets dark. So it could be like an hour later. And obviously Shabbos ends later, the 72-minute thing. So the Chafetz Chaim didn't hold like that. Chafetz Chaim went with the Vilna Gaon, who holds that Shkia is much earlier. So even though the Shulchan Aruch is like the Belza Mincha, is like the Shulchan Aruch, but the Vilna Gaon argues. So they say that the Belzer Rebbe was sitting, and he didn't daven mincha, and he wasn't in a rush. He had time. So I once heard that the Chafetz Chaim also didn't, in honor of the Belzer Rebbe, which probably was not easy for him, because sunset, That's what they say. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's authenticated. In other words, out of respect to the Belzer Rebbe, he violated what he would think. But over there, it's much more serious, because over there he's violating. Here, they're not violating. They're just saying, let's stop eating. They're not doing anything wrong. You understand? It's a rishus. There's also another story that the Satmar Rebbe, who also had this late mincha, was at some meeting where Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky was there. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky was a Litvishe from Slabotka. And the Satmar Rebbe needed a minyan for mincha. And it was already very late. It was. So he asked Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, "Irchen gedavet mincha." So he said, "Heint noch nicht." Today, not yet. Because for him it was a new day. It was already nighttime. Today, not yet. Yesterday I davet mincha, but my yesterday is your today, right? That's another story they say. Yeah, he was ready to compromise simply out of respect to Rabbi Yehuda, and still Rabbi Yossi felt it would be the wrong thing because it would make a statement that everybody has to stop, and it would be wrong, and he felt you have to do it. Rabbi Yossi is Mekel, that's the point. He doesn't want people to be machmer.
You would think that if you have to machmer, it's always better to be machmer.
No, they didn't work that way. If you have to, you have to. If you don't have to. Halachic Rabbi Yossi mechavera. Rabbi Yossi we usually paskin like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda we paskin like Rabbi Yossi. That's why by chametz we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, right? 2 hours earlier, not like Rabbi Meir, but we're soon going to see a third shitta, so we're not done yet with this. It's not yet. Don't do this at home yet.
Rabbi Meir we paskin like Rabbi Yossi.
Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, we paskin like Rabbi Yossi. Usually, yeah. Halacha Rabbi Yossi mechavera.
The couple was by Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir, we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda.
Yeah.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.